Hello and welcome to part 5, I believe, of my analysis of The Shining. Welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed so far and is very engaged in following me on this incredible journey through this astonishing masterpiece of a movie by Stanley Kubrick, right? Okay, so I left you off when in the last part where Jack enters into Ullman's office. And, hi Jack, come on in, and so on, you know. And what I first noticed is it seems completely ridiculous to me that there's 3 large sort of monolith-like industrial-type artificial lights in the ceiling of this small office, which also has a window supposedly to the outside, the window we have discussed before down there at the bottom. The 3 light possibly is a kind of triptych reference. 3 is one of the important numbers, right? And again, I have mentioned or noticed the red plus green coded theme of both the painting to the left of the doorway here, and there's also a 2x2 picture arrangement on the wall to the right here, right? So let's take the next one. Continuity problem. The window in Ullman's office seems to be a violation of the rest of the hotel's construction. From the outside, it looks like a hallway must be behind where the window is, not an exterior with a shrubbery and a strong daylight. This type of shrubbery is also likely not able to grow near this tree line, near the tree line. At this altitude, things tend to not be able to grow because of temperature and low oxygen content in the atmosphere and whatever it is, right? At this Timberline Lodge, which is the name of the hotel, I think I saw Tree Line Lodge in a prior part. It's actually called Timberline Lodge. I confused it, right? At this altitude. So, first of all, there shouldn't be a window there. And secondly, there shouldn't be shrubbery outside, because this sort of big leaf shrubbery, if it was sort of a pine or what are they called, the other kinds of Christmas trees, right? These kinds of trees might be able to make it, but these sort of normal low altitude shrubbery and bushes wouldn't make it up here, right? Okay, so Ullman asked if Jack had any trouble finding the hotel. This is a weird question, in a way, if there's only one road up there, right? Which is something he elaborates on, Ullman. Ullman later mentions that the road to Sidewinder is a stretch of about 25 miles. Since it is the only one he mentions and it closes over the winter due to snow, which leaves the hotel no other choice than to also close, it must be the only road up there, right? Jack says that he made the trip in 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours. But Boulder lies about 25 miles northwest of Sidewinder. Only a smaller slice of the mountains west of Sidewinder can then fit the hotel into this sort of periphery. Jack's trip would never take him 3.5 hours. It's at most 50 miles in dry, sunny, clear weather on a single road, unless he drove slower than the average of 15 miles an hour. Together with Ullman claiming that Jack is doing good time with 3.5 hours, is a sign this is completely made up by Wendy, who has no idea of actual real distances or travel times. Since Boulder, and you can analyze this if you want, right? Since all this, distances and time frames and so on, if you want, Boulder is actually 25 miles from Sidewinder. Maybe the real Wendy comes from Sidewinder, but was institutionalized in Boulder. Instead, she imagines it is a hotel somewhere up in the nearby Rocky Mountains. Right? So she moved 25 miles from Sidewinder to Boulder, right? But she imagines going from Boulder to this hotel. It's sort of, there's some similarities between the distances, and so I'm not quite sure about this, but there might be something you could sort of maybe dig into if you want, right? I don't think this is necessarily extremely important for the story as such. Okay, so he only gets to say good day, and then, they talk about Susie, and then Susie leaves to get Bill, and then it dissolves into the Boulder apartment, and then we see Wendy for the first time, and Danny, of course. The Boulder apartment complex and location resembles very much the hotel and its location. There are cars in front. The building has a similar feel to it as the hotel. There's sort of columns of windows and sort of, right? So I imagine that if Kubrick had said, this is the hotel I want to represent the Overlook, and then he said, okay, can we find somewhere in Boulder? Because this is actually in Boulder, that shot. You can go and find it on Google Maps if you want, right? Nowadays. It is actually in Boulder, this. So can we find something that sort of looks like the hotel? I'll find various places, and then he would sort of, okay, I want that one to be the place, and then not say that he wanted it because it looked like the hotel, but be out of the various suspects that or possibilities that some photographer or somebody doing the groundwork to figure out locations, right? He used a lot of his family or relations to helping doing stuff like this. Even Kubrick's daughters, I believe, particularly Vivian, helped him a good deal. Also on this movie, not least doing the documentary. There is a mountain behind it. You have a mountain behind the Overlook. You have a mountain behind this boulder. You have the boulder, the look of the front of the building is not far off, right? There are cars in front parked there. It's decently similar, huh? This is possibly to be understood as another Wendy creation, similar to the hotel, which is also a creation. Interesting, this establishing zoom shot is arrived into via a dissolve. Dissolving into a zoom seems unusual, but that's just sort of technical stuff, right? It might not have any bearing on anything. The chapter is called The Interview, but jumping out of Ullman's office to Boulder seems to violate that title's superficial function rather quickly. A dog barking heard during and after the dissolve on the parking lot there. This could be associated to the recently seen window in Ullman's office with a dog, or more precisely a wolf. Wolf is the dog sound related to the wolf theme connected to the window, if you get my drift, right? Okay, so these are sort of some sparing thoughts of mine, right? But as I mentioned in the prior part, and I'm going to deal with now also, is that Jack only get to say good day and how are you? And then we jump out of that interview, which is what we believe is what we're going to deal with in this chapter. So it's kind of stupid that you're dragged out of the title of you have just seen a minute earlier to Boulder to see Wendy. So there is a deeper meaning in this. Because when we get to, and maybe I should just switch to the next to the next slide here, right? It's still called The Interview. The chapter is called The Interview all the way until Wendy is done talking with the doctor, and we see the next overview of the mountains and the little car driving supposedly towards the overlook, and it's the whole family inside, right? The three of them, right? Okay. I believe the reason for the dissolve into assume just before is to indicate that Wendy is being disturbed in her reading, actually her storytelling, by Danny talking. Wendy is slow to answer and distraught. And I think there's something packed into this, that it's like if you're concentrated on something and you hear the bell ringing, and so it takes a little while for you. Okay, yeah, there might be somebody at the door, or if you're very concentrated on something, maybe Wendy is concentrated on building this story of hers, and then she's sort of dragged out of it by Danny. Danny is not some boy that exists next to her, but it's sort of her little ghosts inside that sort of, they disturb each other, right? Or the ghost disturb her in her thinking and stops her in her track, so to say, right? Wendy and Danny sit in the kitchen of what is supposedly the Torrance family's apartment in Boulder, inside of the building just shown from the outside. The room looks haphazard and disorganized. Stacks of books and overfilled shelves and cardboard boxes and ironing board and so on, right? It's a real mess. It's not worthy of a housewife, in my opinion, with a child, right? I mean, it's not the worst I've ever seen. I mean, I'm no, cleaning lady myself, right? But I'm not recording a movie, right? But it's like she's being dragged out of this. So it's a way of saying there's a story being told by the first person, but the first person is sort of disturbed now. So we're getting a little break in the story, but this is also a part of the story because it's all a first person view. So the story she's in at the moment changes to this new scenario because she's sort of out of her concentration of this particular very special kind of story she's telling about Jack, right? It has been a while since I made these slides, so I have to sort of... the way the dark clothes stands out on top of the white clothes in the... No, okay, yeah, it's the clothes lying in the basket over there, right? In the clothes in the laundry basket makes and resemble a pair of little, arrows or little ears, if you... Right? It sort of bleeds over from all the other triangles and arrows and ears and whatever, these little triangular shapes that sort of manifested in the laundry there, right? And it could be a reference to Freud's uncanny wolfman that we just had in that window before, right? And it's sort of a sense of danger, maybe. There is a set of salt and pepper little things above her head, right? A reference maybe to her split personality. There's also a figure of a bull. That might be sort of also, it could be an elephant. I think it's a bull, but I'm not sure. If it's an elephant, it's the elephant from the secretary room just before that has bled through to this particular one, right? And then we have sort of the cotton balls up there with little bally things, but that might be some kind of reference to that sphere or of the little car and the little tennis ball we will see later. And there's also a tennis ball in this shot, right? Okay, so there is a box of Q-tips, 2x4 white balls. Yeah, there's 2x4, sort of 4 and 4. 2x4, sort of, right? Who knows? I'm just mentioning it, so to say. Okay, But the book she is writing, or reading, is this one, The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, right? And I recommend you read this book. It's a great book, right? Okay, this is important. This is very, very important, right? I'm going to try to make this as clear as I can. Since Kubrick shows us clearly that Wendy is reading this particular book, it's basically in your face, this book. It's hard to avoid to see the title of the book and so on. It has to be a hint. Since it is in the first scene with Wendy, it must be of pivotal importance, in my opinion. The main character in the book is the Holden Caulfield, as he's called, right? Is telling his story while he's institutionalized, right? This is very, very important to understand. This book deals with a person who is in one way or another institutionalized, and it's early on, as I'm going to reference or quote from the book in the next bit here. He is talking about some events prior, the last Christmas era, between Christmas and New Year, whatever, at that time. And maybe there's, I don't remember exactly, but maybe some months later or half a year later, he's talking about this. And he's talking about this story, but from his own sort of somewhat disturbed mental state. He's okay, he's not crazy, but he has maybe some issues with empathy, or maybe some issues with this or that, or he's something, there's a reason why he's there, right? Sometimes he has too much empathy, and sometimes he has too little empathy, or so. He's sort of unbalanced in his approach to life and other people. Now, let me see, Salinger writes as if Holden is telling someone his story. It starts, if you really want to hear about it, the first thing you probably want to know is where I was born. Holden then says, I'll just tell you about this madman stuff that happened to me around last Christmas, just before I got pretty run down and had to come out here and take it easy, right? Come out here and take it easy. He's trying to tell the institutionalization as if it's sort of a small journey to a hotel or something, like before I had to come up here on the hotel, right? It's very, very similar to this Wendy scenario I'm trying to paint, right? The person he's talking to apparently understands the vague, come out here and take it easy. So it's some kind of professor, some doctor, some psychiatrist, whatever, who understands what he means. We don't necessarily understand it. We have to put two and two together in a way, right? And it's exactly the same approach Kubrick takes. This is the basic structure of what he's doing here. And that's why he's put the Catcher in the Rye here, in order to say, I am doing the same thing with Wendy. Wendy is like Holden Caulfield, who's telling a story about what happens, right? But her story is imaginary and more rosy in some aspects than is true, right? And it's also imbued with her traumas and what is going on in the subconscious and the shadow side and so on, right? So what we see is similar to Holden Caulfield, where we get his first-person description of it. We don't get the first-person experience. We get his description of his first-person memory of his experience back then at Christmas. What we are getting is the actual first-person view of Wendy's story of why she is in this institution. She's trying to figure out a story to explain so she doesn't feel crazy or something like that, right? She probably is half crazy, but somewhere in the spectrum. But it's the same kind of principle structure as the Catcher in the Rye is using. Okay, the person he's talking to apparently understands the vague, come out here and take it easy. The final chapter starts, That's all I'm going to tell about. It could probably tell you what I did after I went home and how I got sick and all, and what school I'm supposed to go to next fall after I get out of here. But I don't feel like it. I really don't. That stuff doesn't interest me too much right now. A lot of people, especially this one psychoanalyst guy they have here, keeps asking me if I'm going to apply myself when I get back to school next September. Right? So we can thus absolutely assume that Caulfield is talking to a doctor, a psychiatrist, or similar. So I think this is the same. Her story is being provoked by being analyzed by some professional person. And this is the story we are experiencing. Right? Okay. Somebody has actually figured out what page it is from the edition, the 1964 Bantam edition of The Catcher in the Rye, where you can see the indents in the text, and it's similar to page 133 and the page before and after, because of where she has opened the book and so on, right? These pages deals with the main character, a somewhat mentally ill man, asking a girl to go away with him in a friend's car to a remote place. She is skeptical and rejects him, and he then reacts verbally strong. This is an obvious pointer to what is going to happen in the movie, or what Wendy is making up in real time here, and also a source for Wendy's beginning mental breakdown from the imagination. Right? I'm not sure why I wrote it this way, but I think you get the message here, right? The overall idea is that Wendy is telling or being forced to tell this story, and she's trying to conjure up something to excuse all these things going on in her head, so to say, right? And Kubrick tells us that not only that by showing us the book, but the chapter he's pointing to by this dog-eared page is that this particular aspect of the book matches very much what is going on in the movie. So you can't say it more clearly without saying it outright, right? Okay. Danny's sandwich goes from a couple of bites to half eaten and come apart, different sandwich. So there's a continuity problem with the sandwich here. I'm not sure if I screwed up, but I think that I have another slide where I go deeper into the sandwich thing. Okay, but there's also a sandwich scene in 2001. Whether or not this is a self-reference, I don't know. Maybe more interestingly, in Eyes Wide Shut, the daughter eats cereals while a slice of sandwich bread lies on a plate next to her, broken in a similar way as Danny's sandwich. Right? Is this a coincidence? I think not. Right? Okay. There's also split a sandwich coming apart and split personality. The symbolism, right? Okay, Danny is watching cartoons on a TV at the other end of the room. Wendy is reading The Catcher in the Rye. There is a dog ear, a reference to Freud's Wolfman. Yeah, maybe dog ear, right? On a page shown when she lays the book down on the table. The page identifies 133 in the 60s, 70s Bantam issue of this book. This is a hint of Jung's The Red Book also, and I think I'll get back to that at some point, I believe. It's a little messy, my presentation here, so excuse me for that. Also hinted at in Ullman's office, there's a red book lying on Ullman's desk. Continuity. Wendy talks to Danny. So Danny is a mirror version. It's not necessarily all of what I'm saying on each slide that is continuity, but there might be some continuity issues among the text I'm presenting here, right? Danny is a mirror version of Wendy. He wears the same color clothes. He eats the same white bread sandwich. It's sort of 2 by 2 squares. Okay, yeah, 4 slices, right? 4 squares. Wendy does not mention Jack in this dialogue with Danny. Instead, it sounds like Danny and her are the only ones going. I mean, if you hadn't heard about Jack, right? And she said, you want to go to this hotel? You wouldn't say, yeah, but there must be some Jack guy also, right? So if you didn't know about that, it might as well sound like she's going there alone with this boy, right? Okay, so no continuity errors in these 4 shots. This is the truest shot of the actual Wendy world. Book has slight continuity problems, but is out of the frame of any of the ratios, so would have been ignored. So, because of this complete full frame, you can see that the way the book lies on the table, that as she's acting the scene, the book might move slightly on the table, but this would have been cut out in any of the versions, either the cinematic versions or the VHS version or whatever version. It would only be visible here in the full frame, right? But apart from that book, that's sort of it inevitably going to move a little. These 4, it switches back and forth between Danny and Wendy. There are no continuity errors at all. And it's basically one of the few shots of this kind going back and forth where there aren't any continuity issues. So in my opinion, this picture is just about the closest we will get to what and who Wendy actually is. She's basically sitting in some messy kitchen all alone talking to her ghosts, right? This is the true shot of the actual Wendy world. Book has a light continuity. Yeah, so this is what I just said, right? Okay. All in the last shot. Different take, camera position. Danny's plate rotates 45 degrees in the last shot, right? And moves towards his front. And Wendy's mug is further away from Danny all of a sudden, right? So in 3 shots with Danny, it's the same, and he eats a bit of the sandwich, and then in the last shot of it goes back and forth between Wendy and Danny, all of a sudden it's a new sandwich, and it's almost eaten, and the plate has moved, and it's a sort of slightly different camera angle, and her cup has moved, and Mark has moved, and so on, right? So continuity problems. A stack of book that tilts a bit to the side and a baseball at the bottom, right behind Danny. And then there's a cucumber that oddly lies on some red milk cartons behind Wendy, right behind, almost connected to her head, right? So the red and green together, as I mentioned before, which symbolizes sex and trauma combined, right? And Danny's invisible friend Tony is also a kind of phallic symbol, right? In Wendy's world. She's just projecting it onto her, ghosts. Yeah. The yellow laundry basket seems like a connection between Wendy and Danny. The yellow symbolizes light or shine, which is Wendy's imagination, all that, right? So it could indicate that Danny is a figment of her imagination. The black piece of clothing in the basket has been arranged to look like wolf ears. I have said that before, right? The stack of books and the ball behind Danny could symbolize male genitals, right? Not necessarily because Wendy fancies Danny, but that Wendy's own childhood was associated with sexual abuse. As we have seen, you have just been in that office with Ullman and all these phallic symbols, right? So there's sort of remnants in her mentality left associated with male sex, right? and a personality split projects it onto Danny. So just a few thoughts, right? A black piece of clothing in the basket. I don't know why I keep repeating. This is something I've reworked over and over, and it has become a little helpless. So I'm sorry for this presentation here, right? It's been a while since I did it. Bugs Bunny's ears is sticking out, adding to the ears theme. The Bugs Bunny ears down here, right? From his sweater. The sandwich which is broken in the last shot adds to both the mirror duality split personality theme and the ears theme. Yeah. All right. So this one shouldn't be. I will jump past that one. That was one of the dissolves. I'm going to use them in a video particularly dealing with dissolves. I thought I had removed it, but I hadn't. Okay. So sorry for the mess. Okay, so we are flying back into the Overlook, right? And then Bill Watson arrives through the door. But there shouldn't be a wall there. If you look outside in the hall he arrives from, there shouldn't be a wall of art with art and a sofa, whatever it is out there, right? That close to the door, as it looks according to what we saw when Jack came through it, right? There was sort of more space, more room for, right? It's like it's two different places. There's some spatial problem here. One would expect a larger secretary's office-like environment. Yeah, there where the phone is and the typewriter is and all that, right? Okay, so it is a bit strange that a hotel manager uses a book with lists of information. That's the red book we see in the office that lies to one side of Ullman, sort of as you can see in the picture there, right? It's a bit strange that a hotel manager uses a book with lists of information on other hotels. Why would he need that? But that's just my lack of imagination, maybe. Prominently placed, the book must be meant by Kubrick as a clue, right? We see it from this angle towards Jack, and this big red book is lying there in the middle of the picture, basically, right? So there's a quote from Jung's book, and it was only published in 2009, but still, there are people who say, and I'm addressing this in the next slide, right? That some parts of the red book was known to some people at least, right? Okay, in the red book, Jung writes, fundamentally, you are terrified of yourself, and therefore you prefer to run to all others rather than to yourself. I saw the mountain of the sacrifice, and the blood poured in streams from its sides. I mean, so the combination of this mountain we are at and the blood running from the elevator, right? Inside this hotel, which is placed on this mountain. So it could be a reference to Wendy projecting bleeding. The elevated blood comes from the sides of the mountain, and the Overlook is located on the side of the mountain, right? So the 1978 Bantam, which I found here, right, looks very much like the Hotel Red Book, which is the one lying there on the, or some similar issue, right? It's the hotel, it's not Jung's Red Book lying there, because it wasn't issued in 1978, right? But it's something that looks similar to the one I found there from 1970. And it looks very much like how the Catcher in the Rye, the same golden lettering and the red cover, right? And interestingly enough, when the Red Book was published in 2009, it had the same color and golden letters. I mean, what a coincidence, right? I mean, it must be a coincidence, but incredible. A documentary produced by BBC from 1972 on Jung, with a direct reference to the Red Book, and in many ways presented very similarly to how the Red Book in The Shining is presented. This is very much the kind of program, TV program, I believe Kubrick would have watched. And the presenter even reminds you of the Grady actor of, what's he called, Philip Stone? This particular sequence could very well also have been a direct inspiration for the whole interview scene in Ullman's office. And it's called The Story of Carl Gustav Jung, Lawrence van der Post, BBC 1972. Okay. Then we have the Charles and Delbert Grady issue, right? There is no Delbert Grady in the King's novel. And at this point, Ullman mentions Charles Grady, I believe, right? And there are 7 letters in the first name, in the first name, and the second name is Grady, which is 5, 2 plus 3. So it's sort of 2, 3, 7, actually, right? But the Delbert Grady that we see later in the bathroom scene, right? I think it's just to check whether or not you are. It's a planted continuity thing, right? In the novel, Bill Watson says the little girls were 8 and 6. This is something that Bill Watson says in the book, in the novel by Stephen King. Here it's Ullman who says, I think they're about 8 and 10. And I wouldn't say this is a continuity problem. It's just a change of the age of the girls, because the twins in the movie is about that age. I think they were about 10 years old at the time of filming. So I sort of moved to not make a continuity error here, right? Okay. Jack and Ullman were, I think, did I miss something? No. I don't think so. Okay. So Jack and Ullman wear the same sort of checkered maze-like pattern tie, just in different colors. And I think there's a maze thing going on with this tie, and it's also green. And there was a green cucumber earlier next to Wendy, and the green and the red together, sort of sexual abuse, and sort of it keeps going through the whole movie, the combination of red and green, right? And it's also this maze and structures, patterns that comes off as some kind of maze, right? So this, when somebody looks into the camera, I call it a continuity error, right? Or I call it continuity. Whether or not it's a continuity error is up for discussion. I don't think it's an error, but in any case, it's a continuity issue. You might, looking into the camera, you might discuss whether that's continuity problem, but nonetheless, I just categorize it as such, so we know what you're talking about here, right? During the interview, Jack breaks the fourth wall. He stares into the camera at least 13 times. So it sort of subliminally makes him sort of the crazy evil one, right? While it is actually Wendy staring into her own abyss. 13 times at least, just in this small sequence. We have Friedrich Nietzsche here, who wrote something like, Und wenn du lange in einen Abgrund blickst, blickt der Abgrund auch in dich hinein. Which means something like, and if you look into an abyss for long enough, the abyss will also look into you, right? She's being scrutinized, and that scrutiny of her subconscious and shadow side sort of starting to stare back at her, right? Okay, so the direction of Nicholson could be inspired by Lon Chaney, also known as the man with a thousand faces. It's a US silent era actor known for early horror movies like The Hunchback and London by Midnight and The Phantom of the Opera. Kubrick famously mentioned Lon Chaney during the filming of Full Metal Jacket while directing Vincent D'Onofrio. He said, "Make it big, Lon Chaney big." Right? I don't think it's completely out of the question that Kubrick used himself maybe as a bit in the Jack character, just a bit exaggerated in Jack, right? So when you see the going to the Overlook scene there with the little car, and we have the text, it says a Stanley Kubrick film, and then Jack Nicholson, right? The surface level is Stanley Kubrick. The subconscious level is Jack Nicholson. Maybe a little. Yeah, I'm just opening for discussion, right? It is strange that the rather creepy Bill Watson needs to be introduced, since he does not serve much function other than just being there. So he must serve some symbolic function. He mirrors Jack in a symmetric fashion. He looks like Jack and mimics his posture as they sit down and put their right leg over their left, sort of mirroring, right? So what I'm saying is that Jack is based on the character that is Bill Watson. And Bill Watson might be based on some character that Wendy knows or knew. I think that Bill Watson is supposed to be a placeholder for Wendy's father, right? And she takes this father and creates a double, which is Jack. So he impersonates particular idiosyncrasies, or what would you call them, mannerisms that was in looks-wise and other things that she wants to accuse her father of, right? They're all being brought to surface now because she's being interviewed in this. She's a part of this interview. This is not about Jack and Ullman. This is Wendy being interviewed, right? Bill Watson must be a significant person in Wendy's past. There are 2 + 3 + 2, 7 photographs above him. And there's also this inverted pyramid with 3 photographs, 2 photographs, and 2 boxes. 2 + 3 + 2, right, is 7, 237. Jack's, and the 237 refers to this secret room that we are slowly going to investigate. It's the darkest secret that she tries to keep hidden, right? I consider all the picture arrangement in the hotel a symbol of Wendy's memory. All these arrangements of pictures are symbolism for memories, right? When someone is surrounded by these pictures, they symbolize that the person is extracted from the past. Therefore, Ullman and Jack are a representation of someone from Wendy's past. Ullman's desktop has a glass plate on it. This creates a composed reflection of the pictures behind Bill, plus with Bill's face in it. If you see the reflection at the lower end of the upper picture, and you cut that out and turn it around, you actually see his face inside a series of photographs, right? It's almost like he's jumping out of the photographs. And we saw these figures, these waiters and figures, a part of the hotel, right? That walked past the door and in front of this sconce light and photographs that will be a tracking shot at the end of the movie, focusing on the July 4th ball, right? One theory that just came to my mind is it might actually be that Bill Watson, or the father of Wendy was actually working in a hotel, maybe. He was one of these, you know, bellboy kind of things, right? Or something similar. Who knows? This creates a composed reflection of the pictures behind Bill, plus with Bill's face in it. The red book stays moved a little forward. There's some, the book is still in the picture, though all the other stuff has gone, and that's a continuity error I will address in the next slide, right? The red book stays moved a bit forward, indicating blood trauma, right? There's some red blemish there next to Bill Watson, and he's placed in this memory, stream of memory here, right? Both Jack and Bill have a vertical shadow line through them, like Wendy had in a dissolve. In that dissolve I'm going to deal with later, but the dissolve that came back into the scene, the placement of the shadows of these alternating walls creates a line through the persons, through Bill and through Jack and through Wendy as she is dissolving through to this picture. But I'll deal with that in the dissolve video when I get to that. They are both a creation by Wendy. Okay, continuity. In the top picture, when we see Bill Watson head on, right? The inbox is gone, the phallic inbox, right, from before. The ashtray there is gone. The brown book is gone, this folded paper that was lying there, right? And the coffee cup is probably gone, though it depends on whether or not it's actually visible in this particular angle, right? But continuity problems once again. Okay. Now you won't believe how many continuity problems there are in this office in general. It's mind-blowing, right? The cigarette butt in the ashtray in front of where Jack is supposed to be sitting disappears and reappears twice. Between the overview shots, the flag seems to move a little towards Ullman. In the Ullman close-up, the flag has moved much closer to him. In the cut from the symmetric establishing shot of the office to the next, a close-up of Ullman, his hand switches from the cut from fingers laying over each other to them being interlocked or folded like this. In one, it goes like this. The continuity problem, right? A small one, but still. The pen moves. There's a white pen next to his sleeve, right? The boxes behind Will Watson moves between shots. They are rearranged sort of horizontally, right? The ink pen on Ullman's office turns back and forth like this 3 times. The eagle statue behind Ullman disappears just to reappear again, right? The bottom third envelope in the mailbox behind Ullman has suddenly tilted a bit and is no longer lying horizontally. The red book moves at least twice. In the last shot, it is seen, it is where it is. The only object seen on Ullman's desk as seen from Ullman's view. Sort of continuity problem, right? As I mentioned before. The house plant in the corner moves closer to Ullman. Near the radio equipment, a blue and white binder is swapped with a yellow envelope. So, you see, this is an extreme amount of continuity problems. If this was continuity, this was continuity. I mean, this is a study in discontinuity, right? It's all over the place. Nothing, it moves around. It's like, this cannot possibly be coincidental, right? It has to be arranged. And this, who in the hell would even think of moving a plant standing there, move it sort of closer to Ullman? Maybe it's like everything moves closer to Ullman here, right? Who would do that? I mean, Kubrick wouldn't do it unless he wanted to, right? And nobody would do it unless they were told to. If I was a part of this, I would, hands off, right? Don't touch anything. The continuity people would say, hey, what the fuck are you doing, right? Nobody would do a thing like that. But things move all over the place here, man. It's ridiculous. So, okay. So now we are dissolving back into Boulder, right? Danny is standing on a stool, splashing water in the sink. Danny's voice is heard, but we cannot see him speak. This may be well to indicate that what we are seriously transitioning into Wendy's imagination now, right? It looks as if there is a very strong light behind the bath curtain and the shadow of something. And I say parenthesis Hitchcock. It's sort of maybe an homage to Psycho, right? Who knows? The cucumber has bled over into Jack's tie. The cucumber that lies horizontally has become the green, right? So green and phallic is sort of sexual. And in a way, you could see this as Jack being a sort of a sexual object for Wendy, is maybe her imagined lover or something like that, right? And that may be why the similar tie on Ullman is red, because he's associated with abuse, right? It bleeds back into the cucumber in the kitchen, and you could say it's still the same scene, maybe, okay, but it's still a switch back, right? Wendy is splashing water in the sink, then puts a carton of milk back in the fridge. A 1x4 arrangement of identical drawers in below her, right, or next to her. Okay, so Hans Memling's large judgment from late 1460. A judgment-like postcard on the fridge near Wendy just as Jack is on the phone. Jesus on a shiny ball, right? Just like in the Memling triptych. There are eggs in the fridge, and eggs are little yellow. The yolk is like a lemon, or there's also lemon in the fridge, right? A little yellow object, right? It's the stand-in or placeholder for Winnie the Pooh, right? It's a recurring theme in the movie. A triptych, also a Masonic reference, the two central columns, maybe, right? But then maybe that's a bit of a stretch. I don't know. Okay, so when the phone rings, the door at the far corner has a chain and an extra lock, right? Why? This is not. I mean, this is strange. It would be the case on a door to outside the apartment, but this is in the living room, and normally there would be no direct access to a living room directly from the outside, right? I mean, it might be different from the part of the world I'm living in, but you will never walk directly into a living room, as far as I'm concerned, anywhere, right? But if this is not a door to the outside, the chain and the extra lock are unnecessary, right? This is sort of a continuity issue, and I should have written continuity up there, right? Or at least it's sort of, this lock and chain is something that you will see in the hotel later. The content on the TV screen in Wendy's apartment as she talks on the phone there, right, bleeds through to the hotel. Ullman and Bill stand in an exact same position as the two cowboys in the movie on the TV, right? Ullman and Bill stand if they are projected out from the TV screen into that scene there. Further back in the background of the lobby. Avis magazine maybe hints to A and V, Avis, the A and the V in in the typewritten pages I mentioned earlier with all work and no play, right? The red-head receptionist stands as if mirroring Ullman. So she stands behind Ullman as if she is behind Ullman. Or Ullman is a sort of placeholder for the red-headed, receptionist, which might be a placeholder for Wendy's mother, right? So all the redheads are representation of her mother, and Bill Watson is her father, right? That's why Bill Watson, or that's why Susie is important too, because she's an invented person. She doesn't appear in the King's novel, right? She's invented to be mother, father's personalities in the story as ghosts from her subconscious, right? It's Wendy's grandparents, maybe even further back in the picture, right? They were there before. The grandparents are influencing her parents that are influencing her, right? In this capture, and they're placed down at the maze. In this capture, everyone is placed under a chandelier except the bellboy. Yeah, everybody here is placed under some kind of lamp or something, right? So it's just, there are shit going on here, right? It's not coincidental. Continuity. Basically, the telephone moves closer to Jack. Danny seems to be playing with some blue and yellow toy in the water in the sink. He is not brushing his teeth as claimed later. There is a strange light from behind the bath curtain as if there's a strong lamp in there. There might be a strong lamp, but lamp and water doesn't go together well, right? 42 on his sleeve. This has been discussed a lot, right? But 42 is 2 times 3 times 7 is 42. That's why there's 42 there, because it's a reference to the number 237, which is a room number, right? The famous room 237, right? Okay. So I think this will be the last one. It's just before what I call the first breakdown, where we see the blood elevator, right? Danny talks to Tony. Plus there's a music crescendo. It sort of rises, right? Danny is placed in a 1 times by 4 composition. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Levels here. There's an outside and 3 levels of consciousness here, right? The middle line cutting the picture in half. The 1 times 4 composition that go through the movie may be a symbol of levels of consciousness. 1 outside world, white, and 3 internal worlds, level pink. So, the next one I will deal with the breakdown that comes with, I call them breakdowns, sort of mental bleed. She gets stressed out and then things bleed through from the subconscious, right? And we get the picture of Danny and the 2 little girls, right? I mean, it's like, come on. Okay, but we'll deal with that particular thing next time. For now, I'm just going to say thank you for listening so far. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share, like, and subscribe. Send this to one of your friends that doesn't believe in the Wendy theory and show them there might be something to it, right? And consider a donation. There are links below in the bio and maybe in the description. I'm not sure. There are links, or otherwise contact me. You can get my contact information on my bio, right? And beyond that,